What's going on? Happy Sunday. Welcome to another episode of the DomTruthBeToldPodcast, episode 6. Took a little bit of a break for Mother's Day, which was last Sunday. And now today, this afternoon, we're back with another episode. So in today's episode, we're going to talk about when you deal with adversity in your life and how it shapes you and how it builds your character and how it builds your momentum and how you're able to rebound off of it. We're going to talk about that a little bit in the second part. But in the first part, I want to talk about when it comes to, relationships and, being with a woman in terms of when you have things that go on in a woman's life, no matter who the woman is, you have to understand as you're being with the woman, how you're going to be able to deal with those tough times that she's dealing with. And I always say being with a woman isn't just, dealing with the good days and dealing with the happy days, and it's dealing with the bad days as well. Say if it's a death in her family and she just needs your emotional support, how are you able to come through for her? How are you able to be there for her? How are you able to have her back? Or say if her car broke down and she needs your help with trying to get her car fixed. How are you able to help her with that? Saying if she's bipolar and her mood switches and it changes from time to time, how are you able to help her with that as well? Those are the things that really define how it is that you're going to be when you're with the woman that you care about. I'm not talking about just a girlfriend. I'm talking about a friend as well, or a best friend as well, and things of that nature, because that's what's also important. As people, we all go through things. We all have our own hardships that we deal with, and it's really how do we handle those hardships that really define how we are going to be, because adversity is going to come knocking no matter what time it is, what day it is, what month it is. And if you're with somebody and you're going to be with that person, it's not just like in that photo on Instagram when she looked real beautiful and real nice today. It's when she don't look so great, how do you still stand behind her? When things aren't going so well, how do you still stand behind her? Things of that nature, things of that caliber. And I think sometimes it all depends on the woman, because I always say that when it comes to being with a woman, you're only looking for one woman as far as like you're going to be with and date and build with and potentially have a future with. But if you're talking about a friend or, someone that you've known for just a couple months and things of that nature, how as a man are you dealing with her hardships? Are you dealing with the adversity that is to come in her life? And how does that really impact her? And what's your role in terms of how that's going to impact her? Things like that to me is what matters, because it really defines how y'all relationship going to be as friends, as partners, and things of that nature, things of that caliber. It's important to understand, I think, when we talk about, videos on TikTok and saying, what women, want in a man, and if they're tired of being lonely and then they're tired of being single, and it gets so bad that, some women, they commit, suicide, and just because they don't have anybody. And, that was real crushing to see. This is great content creator, Lucky, she did a very good, breakdown video on it. And, it should never get to that point, just looking at the content. It just was very, sad that, being single and lonely, it can drive you to, doing something like that because you really don't have anyone. And, whether any kind of, situation with the man and the woman, people love companionship. And everybody, should have that in some form or fashion. I'm not saying you always got to be with somebody and date somebody and be in a relationship with somebody. No, but having someone to talk to, having someone, when you're going through tough times and going through a tough day, that someone can listen to understand, not listen to give an opinion, understanding empathy and things of that nature, things of that caliber. And just looking at her content and what I saw, it was just sad. It was sad, man. Sometimes, when women look like they don't have no other option, they just, take their life. It's unfortunate. And I don't think a woman should do that at all, but again, you don't know their situation. You don't know what they're going through. It could have been a mental issue. It could have been a mental health issue, on top of just being lonely and not having a guy and not having someone to talk to, not having, maybe a father figure in their life at the moment, not having their brothers around. It's a lot of different things that go into that, but that's why I said before, what really defines how we are as men is not the things that we can provide to a woman just because we got the money to. It's how do we show our emotional support? How do we show being there? How do we give our listening ears and things like that when things are going wrong in the woman's life at that particular time? Those are the things that you really could be defined off of, and what makes us great men, and how we decide, to treat our women and how to cater to our women and things of that nature. Or if you're living with a woman and things of that nature and she had a bad day at work, taking care of things in the house for her so she don't have to, if you know how to cook, cooking her, a meal, if you went to give her massages and things, give her a massage, a foot rub, a back rub, a neck rub, things of that nature. Are the things that are important. And again, it don't mean everybody's going to be destined to have that. It don't mean that, everybody has that, going for them, because a lot of people don't. But that's what's more important to me than, doing this, paying for this and paying for that. No, how do you back her when she's going through, a tough day, a tough season in her life? How are you there for her? Are you there for her at all? Like I said, it's the women that we choose and decide to deal with, that really impacts whether we're going to give this much of our support or this little of our support. And that's just how the cookie crumbles, that's just how, Peter paid the piper, that's just how it is, that doesn't mean to necessarily say, every woman deserves to feel the way that they feel. It just means, not every woman is going to be destined for that in certain men's eyes, And as I always say, these are all just opinions at the end of the day, things that we have our opinions on, as people and things of that nature. We don't know these people's lives. We don't know what their daily day situation is. We don't know any of those kind of things. So it would be unfair for me to judge based off of that. But I'm just talking about in general when it comes to, being with a woman and dealing with, her mood swings and dealing with, if she has an attitude about something, if, like I said, she's going through a tough season right now and things isn't going right for her, how do you still stand behind her and stick with her, as the man? Whether, she look at you as, a good friend of hers, whether she look at you as, someone she can potentially, talk to if she's interested in, or someone that she's currently dating, she's going to judge you how you treat her when things aren't going so well for her. And just as I say, as us as men doing on their side, women on your side, when we going through a tough day, we had a bad day, we having a tough season, we having a tough month. How do you show up for us, depending on the kind of man that we are and what we matter to your life in terms of that? How are you going to show up for us? How are you going to be there for us? Because women will be there for guys who they feel worthy of being there for. Not every guy is destined for that. If she don't think you matter to her, or if she doesn't really care for you in that way, then, expect zero support. If you're a friend of hers and she's known you for a while and she knows how to calm you down when things are going rough, kind of keep you in a sliding scale, know how to balance you out through good days, through bad days, then she's going to be there, and expect for her to be there probably 65% of the time, depending on, what's going on in her life and, how things are and things of that nature. But at the same time, as I said before, this stuff is important because we're literally talking about how we show up when things are going bad. And how do the women show up? How do the women show up for us? Is the woman on our side? Is the woman, there? Is she supporting us the way that you think that a woman should? Or is she leaving you out cold and having to fend for yourself? Hopefully that will not be the case. At the same time, we don't know how that is. We don't know how that go. As I always say, people are going to show you how it is. They're going to act. They're going to show their actions and how they're going to treat you, and you have to take it all. You have to take with what's being shown. Your actions will show what you mean to them, how much you matter to them, and that's going to reveal itself. So, as I always say, when you hold someone down and you're there for them through good days, through bad days, through tough seasons, that really determines, how far the relationship go. That really shows how meaningful the relationship is before you even get into all of the transactional stuff and providing and things of that nature. So that's part 1 of my podcast for episode 6 of the Dom Truth Be Told podcast. As I said, I think it's important that when women going through a tough time and what you matter to them during that point in time in their life, how do you support them during that time? That really shows your care, your appreciation for the women that you have in your life. Whether it's a friend of yours, whether it's a girl you're dating, whether it's a family member, etc. Same thing on the women's side. How do you help and support us? How do you be there for us when our day isn't so good, when our month isn't so good? How are you there to show your nurturing and show your care and show your support? Those are the things that really matter, because it's not just dealing with someone when they're going good, things going well. How do you there when things aren't going so good and things aren't going so well? And how much do that relationship that you have with them matter to you will terms how much you're going to be there for them during those times. Now, as I said before, my second part is when you deal with adversity in your life, and how does it shape you? How does it build you? How does it mold you? How do you bounce back from it? I, for one, have went through a lot of different adversities in my life, and how it shaped me, how it molded me, how it made me better. My relationship with Christ was a really big part of it, because sometimes, even as a Pisces, our nature is to be emotional, but I had a different kind of way of being emotional. My emotion just came from struggle, remembering my past, and almost thinking that's going to equate to the future. And then I had to learn to not do that, keep my relationship with Christ, number 1. But number 2, know this is a temporary situation that I'm dealing with. There's another day that's going to come about. The sun is going to rise tomorrow, and then it's going to be back to fixing what I have going on. And for those things, I kind of just learned patience. I learned balance. I learned self-composure. I learned how to deal with this and not let it define me. I always say I have the heart of a soldier and the mentality of a hustler. So my mentality of a hustler comes from grinding, working, and staying consistent. And my heart of a soldier comes from when soldiers are down, they get back up and they keep fighting. Our U.S. soldiers, they go up to Iraq or Iran and they don't give up. Whether one of their men is unfortunately put down by a bullet, they continue to fight for that man on that man's behalf. You're fighting for something that's bigger than yourself, and for me, that's exactly how I like to approach it. I'm fighting for something that's bigger than myself, and I don't want to fail. Even though we're all going to come a time where we fail, how do we bounce back from that failure? How do we continue to keep going when things are getting rough and things are getting tough? How do you let it mold you? How do you let it shape you? How do you build your character as a man from it? Those are the things that I had to learn, losing my job and, losing my grandmother and losing both of my grandmothers, especially during COVID and things like that. having a rebound from having the virus myself and things of that nature, and just letting each thing shape me, mold me. And as I always say, God give you challenges and he want to see how you deal with the challenge. Do you fall, do you crumble, or do you step up and do you pass? Do you survive? Are you able to prosper? So that's one of the main things. Keep God first. No matter what your relationship is with religion, whether you believe God or not, always keep him first. Number two, self-composure, not putting yourself in a position where you get yourself so overwhelmed and oversaturated, where you're exerting all of this energy into something that's just going to be going on temporarily. It's not going to go on forever. And then number three, to me, which is most important, is prospering and staying positive overall, because that's exactly what I had to do. I had to be positive. I had to know that I'm going to prosper over this situation, and this is going to make me better. This is going to turn out to be great in the long run, because if you go into it with a negative mindset, you go into it with a bad attitude, then you're going to see those things show itself. But if you have a good attitude and you really know how to rebound, and you really know how to not let things break you but make you, then it will really turn out to be better. It may not turn out to be better in a snap of a finger, but in the long run, as you go the distance, you will really see a lot of positive impact from how you handle those situations. So that's how you do it. When you go through things, because we all go through things as people, as humans, and things of that nature, keeping God first, being self-composed, and staying positive, and knowing above else you're going to prosper overall. This is the end of the episode 6 of the Truth Be Told podcast. Like and subscribe. I got more content on the way, man. God bless you all. And I hope you guys all stay blessed.